I've been with my wife Lynn for 6 years, married for nearly a year, and until recently, everything about our relationship felt normal. Lynn was the kind of woman who was grounded and serious. She didn't like horror movies or pranks, and there were no signs of mental health issues in her or her family. But 2 months ago, something changed. It started one morning when I was running late for work, coffee in hand. Walking down the hall, I saw Lynn peeking at me from around the corner. Only her eyes and a strand of her dark hair were visible. It startled me so badly I almost spilled my coffee. When I called her, she disappeared, scurrying off toward the living room. I laughed it off, thinking she was being playful for a change. But the incident lingered in my mind. A few nights later, I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen for some orange juice. As I stood at the island, I felt the prickling sensation of being watched. When I looked down, I saw Lynn staring at me from the other side of the counter, her face pressed against the edge. She grinned like the Cheshire Cat, wide-eyed and unblinking. Fear gripped me, and when I screamed, she scuttled away on all fours, her hands and feet slapping against the tile floor. By the time I returned to our bedroom, she appeared to be asleep. The next morning, I confronted her about it, but she just laughed, brushing it off as if it were nothing. From that point on, Lynn's behavior grew increasingly strange. She began peeking at me from behind the couch, curtains, and even inside a trunk at the foot of our bed. I didn't know whether to feel unnerved or amused. When I asked her to stop, she would only laugh or offer cryptic responses like, "Maybe I've just gotten better at it." Her words haunted me. Was she watching me without me knowing? Weeks passed, and the peeking seemed to stop. I thought maybe the phase was over, but then everything escalated. One evening while I showered, I sensed I wasn't alone. When I opened my eyes, Lynn's face was there, hanging through the shower curtain. Her hair dripped with water, her eyes bloodshot, and her grin stretched unnaturally wide. I screamed and stumbled back, but she didn't move. She just stared, her breath fogging the air. Then, without a word, she backed out of the bathroom, slamming the door behind her. I stayed locked in that bathroom for an hour, too afraid to come out. When I finally peered under the door, she wasn't in sight. But when I opened it, I saw her face, her grotesque smile peeking from the closet. That was the final straw. I fled the house, driving to my brother Chris's place. I didn't tell him everything, only that Lynn and I had fought and I needed space. I couldn't bring myself to admit how terrified I was of my own wife. But Lynn wasn't done with me. The next morning, Chris's wife, Rebecca, mentioned Lynn had stopped by, looking disheveled and asking if I was awake. She hadn't come inside, but seemed concerned. Hearing that only deepened my paranoia. I called Lynn's mother for answers, but Marianne offered little help. Her cold demeanor and cryptic suggestion to seek professional help left me with more questions than answers. Eventually, Chris agreed to accompany me back to the house. We found the front door ajar and the inside shrouded in darkness, the air thick with a nauseating smell. As we searched the house, we discovered animal eyeballs arranged in pairs inside our closet. The sight and smell were unbearable, but worse was finding Lynn herself hiding under the bed. Her blood-stained hands trembled with giddy excitement, her grin stretching unnaturally wide. I tried to reason with her, stepping closer, but she lunged at me with a shard of glass slicing my arm. Chris and I fled the house, but not before seeing her sprint after us, her face twisted in rage. I made it to my car, bleeding and terrified, and drove straight to the ER. The police searched the house but found no trace of her. I thought I was safe until my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. 3 words chilled me to my core. "I found you." Attached was a picture, grainy but unmistakable, of Lynn's eyes staring back at me. Now, I'm alone in a motel room, unable to shake the feeling that she's watching me even now. The suicide room, they called it. Room 733. I hadn't even unpacked my bags when I first heard about it. My best friend Lydia and I were assigned to room 734, right next door. It wasn't exactly the swanky South Hall we'd hoped for. Instead, we were stuck in the dingy older wing of the dormitory. Still, I was grateful to be rooming with Lydia, who had been my partner in crime since childhood. As we settled into our new space, our bubbly resident advisor, Beth, popped in to introduce herself. She was all smiles until I asked about room 733. Her cheerful demeanor faltered for a moment before she casually mentioned that no one stayed there anymore. Too many suicides, a hanging, a jumper. Beth rattled them off as if listing ingredients for a recipe. The room was locked up now, she said, and not to worry. Then, as if on cue, she chirped something about the all-girls rule after 11 p.m. and skipped off down the hall. That first night, Lydia laughed off Beth's ominous remarks, but something about room 733's darkened doorway gnawed at me. As the weeks passed, our freshman routine fell into place. Classes, parties, late-night cramming sessions. Lydia, ever the social butterfly, quickly latched onto a frat guy named Mike. But even her bubbly personality couldn't shake the oddities of our new living arrangements. One night, we were jolted awake by a strange grinding sound from next door. The unmistakable noise of a window opening and slamming shut echoed from room 733. We exchanged nervous glances, too unnerved to investigate. The following morning, we noticed both windows in the corner room wide open. This became a pattern. Whispers through the walls, faint scratching, the occasional sound of marbles rolling across the floor. Room 733 wasn't empty, not really. The unease escalated the night I heard knocking. It wasn't from the hall door, but from our shared closet wall, the one separating us from 733. Heart pounding, I called out, assuming Lydia was playing a prank, but she emerged from the hallway, completely oblivious. Shaken, I told her what happened, and her skepticism vanished when she started hearing the whispers too. Desperate for answers, we sought out the campus paranormal society. They were eager to help, but offered little beyond tales of vengeful spirits and suicide lore. Then, a clerk in resident services let slip a crucial detail. Our room, 734, was once numbered 733. The deaths had occurred in what was now our room. The corner room, the supposed suicide room, was just a storage closet. The realization sent chills through us. I'd like to say the discovery spurred us to leave immediately, but college life carried on. Then, just before Halloween, Lydia and Mike had a blowout argument. Mike, along with his fraternity brothers, planned to spend the night in the suicide room as part of a hazing ritual. Furious, Lydia returned to our dorm to sleep despite everything. That night, I dreamed of Lydia standing at the ledge, 7 stories up. When I woke, I had a voicemail from her, slurring her anger about Mike and dismissing the hauntings as nonsense. Panic set in. I raced across campus to our building, dread pooling in my gut as I approached. From outside, I saw it. The window to our room was open. I bolted up the stairs, my heart pounding as I threw open the door. Lydia was there, perched on the ledge, tears streaming down her face. For a brief, gut-wrenching moment, she locked eyes with me. Then she leaned forward and fell. The screams from outside were deafening. My best friend, my anchor, was gone. In the aftermath, I noticed her drawings scattered across the floor, horrific depictions of torment and death. One image stood out, a sketch of our closet door, ajar with something staring from the darkness. My blood ran cold as I glanced at the real door. It was cracked open, just like in the drawing. I transferred schools after that semester. 9 years later, the memories still haunt me. Every fall, I call the school to check if Riley Hall's 7th floor remains closed. This year, for the first time, I was told it would reopen. Room 733 is ready for new residents. The thought makes my skin crawl. Some places are better left locked away forever.